And Helena Humphrey, welcome to the programme. We begin with some breaking news coming from the Middle East, and that is Gaza's Civil Defence Agency saying that about 100 people have been killed in an Israeli airstrike on a school in Gaza City. Now, the Hamas-controlled agency said that 3 Israeli rockets hit the Al-Tabin school in the Daraj district, which was being used to house displaced civilians. The Israeli military has confirmed that a strike took place, but says that the target was a Hamas command center embedded in the school. It says steps were taken to reduce the possibility of civilian casualties, and a video released on social media shows a local journalist walking through a horrific scene of dead bodies. It is the second time in 2 days that schools have been attacked in Gaza by the Israelis, who insist their targets were Hamas military bases. Now, Mohamed Taha from BBC Arabic is with me in the studio. Mohamed, very good to have you with us. Just bring us up to date with the latest that we know at this hour.
Yeah, as you said, the latest is the statement from the Israeli forces saying that it is as we expected earlier. It is the headquarters or a base for Hamas. They targeted the school, and as the Israeli forces saying, they took all measurements to reduce the civilian casualties, and they used smart weapons in doing so. Apparently, this might not work for some reason. There are, as the reports coming from Gaza and the scenes we saw, more than 100 people died. The number is qualified to rise. There are many people injured. There is agony, sadness, very, very distressing scenes, and very mourning people in this school. What we understand also that this strike happened once the morning or Al-Fajr prayer started, so it looks like there is kind of intelligence information reached the Israeli forces that this prayer just started. The people in the prayer area were praying in 2 stories. The below story, the men were praying in the lower story, and in the second floor, women and elderly people were praying. That's why there is a big number of casualties, because people were praying in 2 floors.
So on that point then, speaking about this school, as you were just mentioning there, Israel saying that they were targeting a Hamas command center, but this school sheltering a lot of civilians who had to move from elsewhere.
Yes, the United Nations said that in Gaza in the last 48 hours there are 60,000 people moved from a place to place. This has become a daily habit in Gaza, that people would move from place to a place according to the instructions from the Israeli army. The schools are anticipated to be the safest place for the people to shelter. The schools, the hospitals, the UN facilities, these places that are known that militants of Hamas would not use them. As we all understand that militants of Hamas and members of Hamas are using tunnels, and Yahya Sinwar is using tunnels, and the Israeli forces wouldn't reach many of the hostages because of these tunnels that we are talking about them from the beginning of the war. It is very surprising that the Israeli forces saying that this school is used by Hamas member, and they targeted the school, targeted the prayer area in the school, and targeted the area while it's packed with worshippers in the morning prayer. But as I anticipated also earlier, if members of Hamas would be in the area, they would go to pray in this prayer area. So I anticipate that the Israeli forces wanted to target Hamas members, and they did not mitigate the circumstances that there might be many civilians in the area. This happened when the Israeli forces tried to free some hostages from Khan Yunis before, and when they struck Al-Ma'madani hospital, when they struck Al-Shifa hospital. They do not care much about how many civilians would be killed if they are targeted some members of Hamas.
As you said, some devastating scenes this morning. We're not going to show all of our viewers all of the live pictures just because due to the fact that we are seeing bodies and so on, but just telling us more about that, the situation that the health system finds itself in now, a high number of casualties. What do hospitals look like in terms of treating those people who are wounded, in terms of preparing those who have died as well?
We do not know that there is any hospital in Gaza is fully functioning. All the hospitals in Gaza are, whether they are out of service, like Al-Shifa, Al-Ma'medani, and many hospitals in the north and in Khan Yunis and in Rafah. There are many hospitals are out of service. The hospitals that are partially working, they are suffering from not having enough equipment, not having enough medications. They cannot deal with very difficult cases. There were calls before to Israel to allow the people who are injured to go to other countries to get treatment, to go to Egypt, to go to Qatar, to go to Turkey, to go to other places that they can get treatment. This is not happening much. The people who are injured would be facing this, unfortunately.
And just for our viewers, what they are looking at on the screen there, families, friends, loved ones, presumably crowding around people who are injured, people who have passed away there at the Al-Aqsa hospital there, as we continue to see the toll of this continue to unfold. Of course, the bigger backdrop to all of this, Mohamed, is the prospect of any kind of ceasefire. We know that more talks are expected next week, but I just wonder your assessment now on what you think the likelihood is about any kind of ceasefire, a further release of hostages, of course, as well, at a time when we know now that Yahya Sinwar has been named the head of Hamas, both politically and militarily.
These scenes that we see at the moment must give both parties determination to reach a deal. This war cannot continue. Whether Hamas, they have to overcome their anger and their frustration and their bad feelings towards what happened, and they have to go to negotiations. The only way for this war is to negotiate and to exchange hostages versus prisoners, and to try to reach a ceasefire, try to reach a deal, try to reach to what would be the situation in Gaza after the war, try to reach a solution regarding the positioning of the Israeli forces, try to reach a deal regarding reaching a ceasefire and stages of reaching the ceasefire. And the Israeli also side should look into this. This is what's happening now is putting Israel in a bad image in the world, and Israel must be interested in having a good image. They already achieved the normalization with many countries in the region, with Qatar, with the United Arab Emirates, and they are looking forward to normalize relationship with Saudi Arabia. They have to have this vision of being integrated in the region, and they have to go to the negotiations with positiveness to reach a deal, to end the war, and to end this phase of fighting that is approaching 1 year of fighting, and to return back their hostages to their countries and to their loved ones.
And just we can take a look at those pictures once again of people mourning there, as we understand that death toll continues to rise. At least 100 people, according to Hamas-controlled authorities there in Gaza. We were just talking there about the prospect for a ceasefire and the kind of environment that they will take place in, those talks next week. I just wonder what you think Hamas's appetite for a ceasefire is as well, bearing in mind that the council there did decide to appoint Yahya Sinwar as the head of Hamas. Does that kind of give any indication?
It gives the indication that the situation inside Gaza is controlling the whole scene. So historically, the leadership of Hamas was most of the time outside Gaza when Khalid Mash'al was the leader of Hamas, based in Syria and then based in Qatar, and then Ismail Haniyeh followed Khalid Mash'al. But this is a rare opportunity that we can see the leadership of Hamas coming back to Gaza to emphasize that the situation inside Gaza is taking a priority, and that there is no one can force the militants or the members of Hamas who are fighting on Gaza on any solution. We heard many analyses before that if Ismail Haniyeh, who is based in Qatar, would reach a deal with Israel, with the fighters inside Gaza adhere to it, or now the leadership, the political leadership and the military leadership is one leadership inside Gaza, that might be an opportunity. Israel might see it as a negative position, as Yahya Sinwar is the most wanted person to Israel, but it might look at it as an opportunity, because if they would reach a deal that means Hamas will be 100% adhere to this deal, everybody must see any development in the region is an opportunity to reach a ceasefire, to reach peace in the region. But the main problem at the moment is the analysis that are saying that the right-wing part of Benjamin Netanyahu's government would not agree on any deal. They want this war to continue endlessly, even if the analysis of if the military analysis would say that eliminating Hamas is not an achievable target, eliminating Hezbollah is not an achievable target. The Houthis in Yemen are too far and too difficult to fight them, and there must be a political solution to this problem. For instance, the two-state solution that the United States is promoting for a very long time. So with this vision, with reaching a political solution, we might have a leeway to end this war. But continuing these attacks on several parts, now Israel is fighting on 7 fronts at the same time. Continuing these attacks on all of these fronts wouldn't help.
And then presumably Israel is very cognizant of the fact that it is expectant of an attack from Iran, whether that is through Iran proper or through its proxies. And I just wonder what you think, and whether Israel will be looking to potentially reply with a position of strength, not just to the likes of Hamas, but also Hezbollah here, and whether that could put the potential for a ceasefire as well in jeopardy when it's facing that looming spectre of an attack from Iran.
Indeed, that's why this Thursday invitation for negotiation and ceasefire is a really very important opportunity for all parties to sit on the table and solve the problem. If we are waiting for Iran to revenge on the killing of Ismail Haniyeh and Hezbollah to revenge on the killing of Fuad Shukr and the Houthis and the Islamic resistance in Iraq would join these efforts, and we expect, as you rightly saying, what Israel would respond for all of that, especially if there are civilian casualties that might put the region into an explosion point. So we are between these two situations, whether to sit on the table, reach a deal, reach a ceasefire in this war, or escalate the war, doing revenge and counter-revenge and seeing an out war in the whole region.
Critical point once again in this conflict as it now grinds into its 10th month mark. Mohamed Taha from BBC Arabic, thank you very much for your reporting and your analysis. Just bringing our viewers up to date then of the situation there on the ground, and what you can see there is family members, mourners gathering there at Al-Aqsa Hospital. There are some very distressing scenes. We are not showing you all of them because, of course, bodies and so on. due to that strike that we saw with 100 people killed in an Israeli airstrike. Well, we move on now, taking a look at events in Russia, and that is because Moscow is introducing strict new security measures in 3 regions which are bordering Ukraine in response to this week's surprise incursion by Ukrainian forces into the Kursk region. Now, there are also concerns from the United Nations Nuclear Agency, which has urged both sides to exercise maximum restraint as fighting moves closer to a nuclear power plant. Well, fighting has been raging since Ukraine's army launched its surprise incursion this week, with reports suggesting that they could be operating up to 30 kilometres inside Russia, with intense fighting close to the town of Suja. Francis Reid reports.
Filmed from a dashboard, then uploaded onto social media. Abandoned and burned Russian troop carriers in the Kursk region. The person who posted these pictures has since been arrested, but the BBC has verified the footage. Ukrainian assaults on Russia started on Tuesday and seem to have come as a surprise. Several villages have been seized. This footage from the Ukrainian military is purported to show Russian soldiers surrendering. Reports suggest the focus is happening just north of Ukraine, with fighting thought to be concentrated near the town of Suja. Moscow says up to 1,000 Ukrainian troops are involved in a region which contains a nuclear plant. The UN Nuclear Agency has urged restraint, but the astonishing images of Russian jets bombing Russian territory seem to run counter to the Kremlin's official narrative that the war in Ukraine has been going to plan. President Putin holding a meeting with his Security Council. It's calling the Ukrainian incursion terrorism. And Russia is now bringing in reinforcements. But no act goes unpunished. A Russian missile attack on a supermarket in the eastern Donetsk region has proved fatal, although it's not clear whether it was a direct response to Ukraine's cross-border assault. Anya was there. We started climbing out of the window, she says. We were barely outside when everything started burning. I started running one way, my colleague ran the other way. Ukrainian emergency services have been searching through the rubble for signs of life. No respite for those living this reality. Francis Reid, BBC News.
Now, investigators are trying to work out what caused a plane crash that killed 61 people in Brazil. President Lula has expressed solidarity with the families and friends of the victims, and the Sao Paulo state governor has declared 3 days of mourning. Well, the flight from the city of Cascavel came down on the approach to the international airport in Sao Paulo. There were no injuries on the ground. Our correspondent Ione Wells has the latest.
No time to prepare for landing. Only a terrifying spiral to the ground. Just miles short of its destination. Its final moments, captured by horrified onlookers on their phones. This was a short internal flight from the Brazilian state of Paraná to Sao Paulo, never reaching its destination.
It went down nose first. I thought something had happened, that it had run out of gas. I ran out because I live near there.
I thought it was going to fall into our backyard. It was scary, but thank God there was no one killed on the ground.
57 passengers and 4 crew members were on board. Local authorities say there are no survivors. News reached Brazil's President Lula da Silva while he was speaking at a conference. He held a minute's silence. He said all his solidarity was with the families and friends of the victims. There are no answers yet for the friends and families of those on board. Only unimaginable grief and shock. Ione Wells, BBC News in Sao Paulo.
Well, let's just go back to that developing story at this hour. Gaza's civil defense agency saying that at least 100 people have been killed in an Israeli strike on a school where civilians were sheltering there in Gaza. We can take a look at some live pictures, I believe now, of the situation, and what we have been able to see is some devastating scenes. Family members gathering around loved ones. Of course, many people involved in that strike, many people dead or injured as well, at a time when the health system, hospitals are also in a very difficult situation. Many saying that the health system has all but collapsed there. We've been discussing this with Mohamed Taha from BBC Arabic, who has been joining us throughout the course of the morning in the studio with this. Now, Mohamed, Israel says that it was targeting a Hamas command centre within that school. Many civilians, of course, have been killed in this. Do we know whether there'll be an investigation from the Israeli side?
The Israeli forces already said that they targeted this school intentionally. So unlike the other incidents when the Israeli forces said we will investigate and we will look at it, it was a mistake. But in this incident, the Israeli forces, they said they targeted the school. So they aimed at their target. We do not expect investigation to happen, as they achieved their target by targeting this school. The Israeli forces saying they targeted members of Hamas. Whether these members of Hamas amongst the 100 dead or not, we do not know. But what we know that this happened several times before, when the Israeli forces targeted members of Hamas, and they did not care much how many civilians they would kill to achieve that target. So we did not hear that there will be any investigations, but what we know that there are tens of people who were killed and tens of people who were injured.
Well, we do see civilians sheltering in that school. Those civilians, as you say, among the dead, they are being told to move from areas. But I just wonder, when they go to a school or a centre like that, hoping to be safe, do they have any idea of where to go, where they will be safe?
Yeah, this is the $100 million question at the moment, where these people would go. If the schools, hospitals, and even the safe places like Al-Mawasi area, the designated safe areas by the Israeli army, are targeted, where they would go. And this is a psychology trauma, as a problem, a moral trauma, a psychology trauma to these people, where they would go if around 2 million people would expect to be targeted at any time, and even if they would go to what's so-called a safe place in a hospital or in a school, and they would sleep, and they would expect that they would never wake up again, because they wouldn't know that there is no guarantee that they wouldn't be targeted. This is the big question. The 5,000 or 6,000 people who were sheltering in this school, the school of Tabi'in in a Daraj area in Gaza, where they would go. Most of them, they lost their homes. Most of them, they don't have anywhere to go, and they will end up living in the streets or having tents in any street, and they will be even more vulnerable to Israeli targets, or more vulnerable to diseases or spreading of any viruses or bacteria or other diseases. So this is a big question for these tens of thousands of people who are living in Gaza, that they live permanently without safety at any time of their lives.
And as you say, many of these people have moved not just once but twice, multiple times. And this is all coming at a time when, according to Gaza health authorities run by Hamas, are saying that over 40,000 people now have been killed. I just wonder if there's any clear understanding of ultimately what Israel's end game and plan for Gaza could look like, when we know that Netanyahu has said that the objective is the destruction of Hamas. Someone like Daniel Hagari saying that isn't necessarily possible. Any clear understanding?
Indeed, your question, this is a very good question. That divide between the military side in Israel and the political side in Israel. The military side in Israel, they are fully convinced that eliminating Hamas is not possible. Daniel Hagari came before and he said that Hamas is an ideology and we cannot eliminate it. He said that publicly. Benjamin Netanyahu, the Israeli Prime Minister, is insisting that he will go permanently to eliminate Hamas, and he would continue this war endlessly to achieve his target. The lack of Israeli vision of how this war would end is really a big issue.
All right, the BBC's Mohamed Taha there. Thank you very much for your reporting and your analysis, Mohamed. Well, of course, you are watching BBC News. Remember, you can always get the very latest on that developing story on our website. That is bbcnews.com. I'm Helena Humphrey in London. Thanks as ever for your company. We'll have plenty more news for you at the top of the hour, so do join us then if you can. Bye for now.